Welcome. I'm Linda Tobash, Senior Advisor for Education at the Korea Society. And for those of you who are not as familiar with the Korea Society or know who we are or what we do, we are a nonprofit, non-governmental organization based in New York City. And we are solely devoted to the promotion of better understanding and appreciation of Korea and the importance of the Korean U.S. alliance. And I am thrilled to be here today with Dr. Lucy Park and Elizabeth Jorgensen, the co-authors of Sijo, Korea's Poetry Form. They have created a wonderful, wonderful book that we're going to be talking about today. And that's just a wonderful contribution to the field. So Dr. Lucy Park is the founding member of the Sejong Cultural Society in Chicago. She's currently the executive director. The society provides a myriad of references and resources, recorded print that's specific to Sijo, but also information on Korea as a whole. And I invite you and encourage you to visit their website. Many of the resources on Sijo were actually created by Lucy. So thank you for those contributions. But Lucy also wears two hats. She is on the faculty of the University of Illinois at Chicago's Medical Center, where she teaches pediatric allergy, immunology, and pulmonology. And she received her medical degree at Seoul National University in Korea. Her co-author is Miss Elizabeth Jorgensen. And Elizabeth is a writer and an educator, and she has presented extensively on Sijo writing, on teaching Sijo. She's conducted teacher training workshops as well. She's an English literature and creative writer instructor at Arrowhead High School in Heartland, Wisconsin, which I think is an appropriate name because of, as you'll see, the amount of heart in the process of Sijo writing. She was named one of 20 of America's most inspiring educators by the Henry Ford's Innovation Nation Teacher Innovator Award. And while she writes extensively about Sijo, and she is also an excellent and award-winning Sijo writer, she has also authored other books. She's recently authored in October, it came out of this year, a middle grade young adult sports biography, which was, as I said, just recently released. And that's Gwen Jorgensen, USA's first Olympic gold medal triathlete. And I assume there's some connection there.
Yes, she's my sister.
Right, great. And she's also the author of the educational text, Hacking Student Learning Habits. So I welcome you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
My first question I'm going to throw out to you is a bit naive, I think, given our audience that probably are knowledgeable of Sijo and maybe writers and teachers of it themselves. But the book is so filled with great details on the form, its history, its development. So I am going to ask this question anyway. And so, Lucy, what is Sijo?
Sijo is a traditional three-line Korean poetic form, and Sijo are written in 3 lines, each averaging about 15 syllables for a total of 45 syllables. Each line is written in 4 groups of syllables that should be clearly differentiated from the other groups, yet still flow together as a single line. And I highlighted the 3 syllable at the beginning of the third line because that's what we want to see. The next, there are some variations allowed. So you can have plus minus 1 or 2 out of this form, but this is the basic form.
That's great. And I know that you also, in the book, you talk a bit about the history of Sijo and how it evolved?
Yeah, so the first record is Sijo, was written by Utag in 13th century. So by that time, it was quite popular. So probably it goes back a couple of hundreds before Utag's first Sijo. We read these days. It is on our website. And the lay people probably wrote Sijo and sang before it was written down after the invention of the Korean alphabet.
We had a question from one of the registrants for the viewing who asked, does it have Chinese roots?
Well, China has formed short formed poetry known as Juezu, and it was developed and popularized around 6th century, so long before we had Sijo. And how it affected the Sijo is not clear by just looking at that, but it is interesting that both countries have short form Sijo. The Chinese Juezu typically have 4 lines and 5 syllables in each line. And later, some other poets wrote 4 lines with 7 syllables.
Mm-hmm.
So it may have some effect. So by the time the Koreans were writing Sijo, there was a revival of interest in Juezu in China. That is my understanding.
Okay.
So direct relations, I cannot tell you.
Okay. Do you know, was a Chinese form sung as well, or was that unique to Korea?
My understanding is unique to Korea. The Koreans like to sing. In ancient days as well as now, the contemporary Korea, when we gather together, we always sing.
Okay.
So, yeah,
And-
Sijo was a song.
Yeah. And sometimes there might be a misconception that Sijo was based on haiku, or that haiku preceded Sijo. Can
Yeah.
you set the record straight on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. So first written haiku appeared around 17th century. Of course, probably they started writing haiku before then. So by looking at the written haiku, there are about 400 years difference. So again, the Koreans also started writing Sijo before that first written Sijo. So yeah, it predates the haiku by several hundred years.
Mm-hmm. And you provided us with a sample of an early Sijo. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk about this a bit, and then we'll be looking at a contemporary one of one of the Sijo competition winners. But do you want to talk about this particular Sijo?
Yeah, Hwang Jinhee was a great poet and entertainer who were very excellent in all sorts of arts, dancing, music, everything. So at the lower part of the slide, I have her Sijo in Korean alphabet. The Korean alphabet is put together consonant vowel or consonant vowel consonant. So each character is 1 syllable. So you can easily see how many syllables there are. 청산리 벽계수야 수의감을 자랑 마라. 일도 창해하면 다시 오기 어려우니 명월이 만공산하니 쉬어간들 어떠리. So she used a syllable count of 3, 4, 4, 4. And then 2, 4, 4, 4, 3, 5, 4, 3. So altogether it's 44 syllables. And then upper part, the English translation goes, Jade green stream, don't boast so proud of your easy passing through these blue hills. Once you have reached the broad sea, to return again will be hard. While the bright moon fills these empty hills, why not pause, then go on if you will. So this English translation has more syllables than 45. So it's at 710, 7899. So altogether it's 50. So the good translation of Sijo, I believe they should follow the count, but in this particular one, it is a little bit longer.
Mhm.
So this is 16th century Sijo. But Toby, we have English Sijo, original English Sijo written by Larry Gross. So can you show that slide?
Mhm.
So Dr. Gross was English literature professor from Chicago. He taught in Florida for many years. He taught Sijo to many students and then the poets. And this is a really fun Sijo to read. Rising early each morning, I let her into the warm barn. I pour oats, clean her stall, then fork more hay into the trough. When she takes my hand away, why do I think of my wife? So this is the part. The third line has just a surprising, like a tone or some punchline. That is the really essence of the shijo and fun part of the shijo.
Okay, thank you for sharing those two. I think they're great examples, and also sharing those insights in terms of translation as well. And we'll touch upon that a bit later as well. But Liz, I'm interested in how you became interested in Shijo. Lucy, I'm assuming, you're Korean, and you finished medical school. Actually, were you always interested in Shijo before I asked Liz?
No, not at all. So we started music competition and the essay competition. And then Professor Frankel at SUNY, State University of New York, asked me if I wanted to include Shijo in our essay, the writing competition. And then he introduced me to Professor McCann at Harvard University.
Mhm.
My first reaction is, Shijo is hard, very difficult to write in Korean. And how can you write in English? And I found that Professor McCann, Professor Peterson were teaching English Shijo already. And then I found Professor Gross and his friends who were writing English Shijo. So we started Shijo competition and we prepared lots of material, teaching material, resource material, and put it on our website.
So you discovered the joys of Shijo in the US.
Yes, in Korea, I just read all this like Hwang Jin's Shijo, and I just were amazed, like, oh, what a good poem! But never dreamed of writing Shijo in Korean, and now I'm writing in English.
That's wonderful. And Liz, how did you find Shijo? And were you first attracted to the form as a writer or as an educator?
I teach creative writing to juniors and seniors, and I'm always looking for authentic purposes for their work. So I'm looking for magazines or publications or writers' markets or competitions that we can write and then submit to. And I stumbled upon the Sejong Cultural Society that they had this Shijo competition, and I knew nothing about it. But like you were saying, I used the resources that they had on their webpage to teach myself. This is probably over 10 years ago. And I did not have much confidence in myself at the beginning. I said to the kids, I'm learning along with you and we're going to try this together and see how it goes. And then maybe a year or two after that, Dr. Park reached out to me and she said that they were impressed with my student submissions and they wanted to come to our school and record me teaching lessons. And I was like, are you sure? I know enough. But they really did affirm that what I was doing was correct. And that also propelled me then to learn more about the form, read more examples, hear some lectures from Shijo experts.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so many of her students won prize. So that's why I decided to reach out to Liz, and we've been collaborating ever since. And it's been really wonderful working together.
That's wonderful. So how did the two of you decide to create Shijo, Korea's poetry form? I mean, and because both of you are co-editors, but also you've contributed, your authors, you've contributed to different chapters. So yeah, Lucy, what was the inspiration?
Yeah, so we posted a lot of reference material on our website, and we offered Sijo workshops, lectures, classes, and Sijo reading events since about 2010. We started in 2008. And then many attendees of this meeting who are English teachers, poets, who are interested in Korean culture, they came up to me and said, where is a book? Is there any reference books? So I told them, go to our website or YouTube channel, and then you all the materials are there. And then they turn around and then again, so is there a book? So finally, I decided to put all those material into a book. So before COVID pandemic lockdown, I was too busy. So I was just thinking about it for several years. And well, it's strange to say like this, but I guess thanks to COVID pandemic lockdown, it was possible to finish this book.
Do you want to add anything, Liz?
Yeah, it's, I really like that it's divided into 3 parts. The first part overviews the history. The second part are a bunch of different lesson plans. And so you can see how educators from across the United States are implementing Sejong in a variety of curriculum. And then the last part is my favorite Sejong. And so they have some winning poems. And then you hear a little bit about the author, the person who wrote the poem, and then an analysis by a Sejong poetry expert. And, like Lucy said, it was a labor of love. We really enjoyed putting it together during the pandemic. We'd meet Sunday mornings on Zoom for a couple of hours every week and go over new editions. And also, like you were mentioning, that there's all of these different chapters from a variety of Sejong experts. I really appreciate that as well.
Oh, and I do as well. It is a beautiful book. It's beautifully written. It's beautifully organized. And this particular talk that we're having is part of our Spotlight on Korean Studies in K through 12 schooling. But really, what is in the book and what it has to offer is great for teachers. It's great for aspiring Sejong writers. But it's much more, it has so much to offer for an even wider and broader audience, just to learn about the history, just to learn about, translations and music incorporation, and then the experts and also the students, their stories talking about why they wrote the Sejong they did. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book. So thank you. Thank you for this wonderful contribution. In the book, you and it's both of you, but especially Liz, you provide tips and advice. It's sort of a roadmap, so to speak, on how to teach Sejong. But before we delve a bit deeper into how, and as you said, you're a creative writer teacher, you're an English literature teacher, but really, who should teach Sejong, or who can teach Sejong, in your opinion?
Everyone. And I also think that everyone should write it. Sometimes teachers or just, lay people can be scared of poetry, and the Sejong form, I think, is inviting, and that there is a template. Like, you have the groups of syllables that you can follow. Each line of the Sejong has a particular purpose. It's great for creative expression. It's great for connection. I was just at the National Social Studies Conference presenting on Sejong, and I was so energized by the social studies teachers' enthusiasm for taking poetry and then using it in their classrooms. They had just really innovative ways that they could use Sejong. And so I think everyone is the answer.
Wonderful. And so let's delve into the roadmap a little bit. How do you teach Sejong? How do you approach it? And I know that you said that you start with sort of a poem, Emma. So I'm going to bring that up on the
we'll talk
screen
about how the kids know haiku. And so I'll say, well, you all know haiku, so you can do Sejong. It's as if Sejong went to college and got a little bit smarter. And so, I prepare them to know that they have to do more than they did with haiku, but that they can do it, that they're juniors and seniors and they can take on this challenge. And I'll show them, just like Dr. Park was overviewing, the different groups of syllables. And sometimes that can be scary for students, or they don't quite understand what a group of syllables would mean or look like. And so I pull up this poem by one of my former students, Austin Snell, and I'll just read it to them. My new dog, little Emma, a gift to us from the heavens. My aunt passed, stupid cancer. My mom distraught. Everyone here muted. I could look into Emma's eyes. She's still here on 4 paws. And then I'll ask the kids, the third line needs to start with a twist. And so I could look into Emma's eyes. How does that work as the twist? And then they'll have some ideas, they'll talk about it, they'll notice some things in the poem, and we'll talk about what can you do with the twist. It could be something that's shocking or surprising, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be a turn or a shift. It could be even a question, or it could be a different perspective, right? The kids will then brainstorm what the options would be for twists. And then we'll go through and we'll look at the different groups of syllables. And so I'll say, okay, in the first line, we're looking for 3, 4, 4, 4. Can we find them? What's the first group? My new dog. Second group, little Emma. Next group, a gift to us from the heavens, right? And then they can say, oh, I see what he's doing. He's using the punctuation to help us know where the different groups of syllables are. I also like that it's clear. Like, we read the poem and we understand it. We feel it. We can relate to it.
That's great. And so after Emma, then I think you show them how to do this. They get a feeling for the flow, for the tempo, for the syllables. And then you start delving in with them, sort of how they should plan it.
Yes. What do you want to write about? And I'll ask the kids, like, what's that thing that you can't stop thinking about? What's weighing heavy on your heart? And I'll give some examples of maybe things that I'm thinking about, and then they'll share what could serve as their inspiration. And I want them to care about it. Like, yes, we're writing this to send it off to a competition, but ultimately you're sharing your story with the world. And so why do you want to share what you're going to write about? It's really important that they put us in a place. And so to ask them to think about that specific place. Is it present day? Is it the 1800s? Is it on the moon? Like, what is the setting? And then the twist. And then even we can ask them, this is especially useful, I think, for our younger students, to draw out the story. What would it look like? And that helps them to visualize, both literally and metaphorically, the characters, the setting, the plot, the twist.
Mm-hmm. And then you sort of move into the 3 lines, right?
Yeah, Linda Sue Park has a book, Tap Dancing on the Roof. It's a book of Sijo poems, and I'll pass that book out to my students and we read it together as a class. And at the end of the book, Linda Sue Park, she says that you should just write your lines in complete sentences. And so here, this worksheet, I'm tying back to Linda Sue Park's advice. Just like in the first line, just tell me, who are the characters and what are they doing? Write these as complete sentences, and then we can go back and we can modify the syllables. We can play with words. We can insert a different verb or whatever we want to do. But just at the beginning, give me a sentence and make it a complete one.
And so then you're at the point where you move from planning into, your sentences, and now you have your writing worksheet.
Yes. And so I try to throw at the students a bunch of different options. I'm not saying this is the one way to write Sejong, but I'm saying we could try this, we could try this, we could try this. And in that exploration, they're figuring out what works for them. They're overcoming some roadblocks. And this worksheet in particular is useful for kids who are stuck. And so I'll just say, give me some thoughts or experiences on anything. And then give me some more thoughts. And then some more thoughts. And then what we have at the end is a Sejong. And then I also have some example worksheets that have already been filled out. And so then the kids can see what that might look like. And I think we have one here that's about a dragonfly. Exactly. So they have the experience, the thoughts or feelings, the following thoughts, the next steps, and then finally a Sijo. And so that's useful for kids too, to see, I can write about anything. It could even be a dragonfly.
So I have a question that has to do with, are there common places where students get stuck that instructors, teachers might be able to anticipate from your experience now of teaching Sijo for probably over 10 years and all the experience if you've had, the references, but where would you say, or does it depend on the individual student? Obviously, some maybe get stuck on the twist, some maybe just really can't get the tempo right. But what do you see are some of the common areas that teachers can sort of assume that there may be areas that students struggle with?
I have nothing to write about. I have nothing to say. I don't know what to do, right? That's the most common one. And even with Austin Snell, I remember when he was working on that poem, he said the same thing to me. I don't have anything to write about. And just coming back to the students with that challenge of, you've got to have something. Austin, something is going on in your life that you cannot stop thinking about. What is it? No, there really isn't anything. I'm like, come on, like, no, for real. Like, there has to be something. And then he opened up and he said that his family was dealing with the passing of his aunt. And I was like, Austin, like, that's it. Like, write about this. And so there's those students. And I keep pushing until they feel comfortable being vulnerable and like sharing something that really means something to them. I think the other thing that can become a problem is the twist. Sometimes kids will want to do something that I think is cliche, that I've heard before. And so I always challenge kids to do not write me a twist where it's all a dream. I don't want to see that. And I don't want to see one where it's all a video game. I've seen those over and over and over. And so just challenging them to come up with something original. They have to think, right? It takes some brain power. And some students, we know, will be a little bit resistant to that, but just keep at them. They can do it. Linda Sue Park also has some advice in her book. She says, think about where the twist would go or where the poem would go naturally. And then the twist then should go in a different direction. So I'll often say that to my students. Okay, where would this poem go naturally? Do anything else but that. And then that sometimes will help them with their twist.
Oh, that's great. And also, if you could talk a bit, it's sort of like not a one and done. Okay, here it is, and now I'm done. So that whole process of feedback, both from the instructor, from you, but I think you also incorporate peer review.
Oh, yes. So we'll write, and I will tell them, don't just write one poem, like write 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And what I'll find is the more they write, the better they get. The more risks they take, the more meaningful the Sijo become, the more artful their groups of syllables, the more I feel a pattern or a rhythm. And so I'll just say one day, today is about volume. Give me as many Sijo poems as you can. Just crank them out. And then we'll share with partners, we'll share with me, and we'll get some feedback. And, it's art. And you want to know how somebody's going to respond to your art. And so you share your poems with a friend and just say, which one do you like? Which one resonates with you? Which one made you think? And the kids will often say that they learned something there, that they're surprised, which Sijo become their partner's favorites or which one I prefer. We also do a lot of sharing as a whole class. And so I'll have a Google slide presentation and every kid will put a couple of Sijo on the slide and we'll just go one kid at a time through all 28 or 30 of my students. And the kids will read their poem and I'll say, okay, you're the judge at the Sejong Cultural Society. Which one of those 3 or 4 poems would you choose? And so then we'll just do a vote and we'll talk about them. And the kids then too will see, oh, I never noticed that I'm writing about something that 5 other kids also wrote about. Or, oh my gosh, I'm surprised that everyone loved that poem. And so we'll have some really rich discussions just about our preferences and how subjective it all is.
It really, really is fascinating. And, we could spend, as a full day or a full weekend talking about the how-to, but thank you for this quick synopsis your experiences and sort of the roadmap of sort of how you get started, how you progress, how you end. I want to go back to the beginning of the book. It begins with 8 chapters, and they explore a variety of additional dimensions that accompany sort of Sejong. So there can be the performance of it, music, the cultural dimensions, especially in terms of, Sejong in translation, just to name a few. And also, it's not just Sejong being translated from Korean, but there's Sejong writing all around the world. So it's translations into Korean and translations from German into English, etc. One of the things I like to think about is the incorporation of art. And Lucy, throughout the book, you've included these delightful drawings, whimsical drawings, happy drawings, very evocative, sad drawings, really to capture the spirit, or should I say the heart, Heartland, no, the heart of this Sejong. Why did you decide to include these drawings that were included? And how did you find the artists?
Yeah, artist Wonsook Kim is an internationally renowned painter who had exhibitions all over the USA, Europe, and Asia. So she studied art at Illinois State University. And several years ago, her alma mater, Illinois State University, named their art school Wonsook Kim School of Art. And Wonsook is a sister of Wonhae, who is my high school classmate. She lives in New York. And I told Wonhae at one point about my Sijo book project. And I met both sisters when Wonsook came to Chicago for a solo exhibition at the end of 2019, just before the COVID. And my friend Wonhae introduced me. She came to Chicago to the opening reception. So Wonhae, who is older sister, told Wonsook, you must do the drawing for my book. So she promised, and while I was procrastinating, Wonsook kept sending me emails asking when I'll be ready to send her poems. So she was another one who was pushing me to finish the book. And really, she did a wonderful job, and all of us appreciate every single drawings that accompanies the winners, the Sejong, and the covers and everything.
Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. And really the drawings, for those of you who have not seen the book yet, I encourage you to get the book because the drawings are just, they're a wonderful addition, a wonderful touch. You also, have a chapter on the cultural dimensions, and that's specific to translation and what one should look for and what one should beware of. And as we know, there's really a lot of discussion these days about the importance of translation. So I just wonder if you can sort of summarize, what you stress in that chapter.
Yeah, translating poems into another language is a very difficult task. And translating Sejong is even harder because of the format and desired syllable count. So we have a chapter about this topic written by Professor Sejong Kim, who is the past president of the Literature Translation Institute of Korea and a professor emeritus at Seoul National University. Currently, he teaches Korean literature at Dartmouth College in the US. So I've seen many translations of Sejong that do not represent the original Sejong. So I believe the translation of poems is a form of art. And some of us translate Korean Sejong to English and the English Sejong to Korean. We try very hard to make the translation fit the Sejong format, yet we represent the poet's intention. So then we may not have exact translation by word or sentence. So we may have to call it adaptation rather than translation.
Okay, thank you. And the other dimension that you talk about is music, and that, you know, different sijos have been put to music. This is an example here, but there's also sort of hip hop music and jazz music, and they actually use some of the ancient sijos. But again, can you talk about that tie to, you know, obviously we have the art, but now also music?
Yeah, Sijo was meant to be songs, and ancient Koreans sang Sijo. The singing Sijo is known as Sijo Chang in Korea, which is a genre of Korean traditional music. So it is sung at a very deliberate pace and use very unique vocal techniques. So I try to make Sijo songs that fits to the contemporary adults and young people. So actually, Koreans have the Korean art song that is based on Sijo. So I try to commission a jazz musician, other classical music composers to write music based on Sijo. And then I found that hip hop style is way to go, because I heard that hip hop is the most popular genre among young people. And the structure of Sijo fits well with the hip hop style singing. So I found a hip hop group, Elephant Rebellion in Chicago, and we've been collaborating. And they produced several hip hop songs based on Sijo, and they wrote Sijo to make hip hop songs. So we have those videos on our Sejong Cultural Society YouTube channel. So when you have chance, visit our YouTube channel and listen to those music.
Okay, and so we'll just play a small short snippet now, just so you get a taste of it.
Learn English, the official language. This is America. Are you dumb? That's what they say. Teachers, counselors, special ed class. Speaking Shawnee on First Nations land. America, where is that?
It's hard for me to speak the past, a refugee, a lethal path. But now I'm here, awoken, life it's broken, right? There's hope tonight. Open lights and then I speak the truth. Had an open mic with the youth, what it do? What it do?
They say go, return to land that I don't know, it makes no sense. Born and raised American, so Mexico is still foreign. Culture kept, but this is my home. Immigrant no, Latino. Immigrant no, Latino. Immigrant no, Latino.
Also, I believe Roberto Santos, still American, the first place winner in 2013. What grade was he in when he wrote this?
He was in 12th grade,
Okay.
and he stated that I just wrote what I was thinking all my life, and just condensed into 3 lines. And I got the cash prize, and this is such a surprise. And his Sijo is really great. Many immigrants and children of immigrants can really feel the emotion.
Great. The other thing too, I think that Liz, you've mentioned at least in the past and in our discussions leading up to this, which is that in teaching Sijo and incorporating the music, the art, etc. There's also a concept of more freestyle Sijo. But when does Sijo no longer become Sijo?
Right. And that's one of the things that you have to talk about with students, that we have a little bit of variation, that we can mess around with the syllables a little bit, but the further we get from the prescribed groupings, the less it is a true Sijo. And so I really do challenge my students to stick to the 3-4-4-4, 3-4-4-4, 3-5-4-3. And, even just looking at Roberto Santos's poem, you can see he's got a really strong Sijo structure in that third line, culture kept, right? It's a 3-beat start. He's true to the form. And so that's another thing that I really do try to emphasize in my classes, that we want to be as close to the syllable groupings as we can.
And I see how this fits in well with hip hop because of that strong count.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you going to?
No, I think, the music or the musicality also gives us an opportunity to talk with students about what do songs do for us? Why do we listen to songs? And the kids then will be able to talk about the emotions that they feel when they hear songs, the beat, the pattern, the rhythm, right? And then they can make those personal connections to the Sejong that they're writing. We should have a story. We should evoke an emotion. There's going to be a beat, a pattern, a rhythm.
Okay, thank you. The very last section of the book, it ends with an excellent selection of 24 Sijo poem winners from the past 14 years of the annual competition that the Sejong Cultural Society has. And almost every single one of them is accompanied by a very evocative Wonsook Kim drawing. But even further, I think that's so key is there's a statement from the author. There's a statement where the student gives some background about who they are, but they also explain what they were thinking about, why this particular Sejong. And then that's followed by reflections from an expert on what they found appealing about that Sejong. It's wonderful both for aspiring writers, but also for teachers, right? Because from the student's statement, you see their final product and you see a bit of why and how that was important to them. But then the expert, their reflections on it. This provides such concrete insight and also very specific tips on what it takes to write an award-winning Sejong. So of the 24 that were there, Lucy, you had shared this Sejong as one of your favorites. So I'm wondering if you can say why, and give us some insights.
Yes, I just read it quick. In the South, Grandpa was born. Paper shack house had a dirt floor. As a kid, he drank coffee. Milk for them was too expensive. They were rich with gospel spirit. In church, they sang and filled their hearts. So Dante Kirkman was an 8th grader when he won an honorable mention in the Sijo category and second place in the essay category in 2016 Sejong writing competition. So in the winner's statement, he said that his grandfather grew up in segregated New Orleans during the Great Depression with nothing but his faith in God and a resolve to make a better life. So this Sejong paints a powerful, vivid picture while evoking strong emotions using only 45 syllables in just 3 lines. So he clearly illustrates the poverty his grandfather endured in the first and second line. And this accentuates the twist in the third line. Powerful statement, the material poverty in contrast to spiritual wealth. I think Dante, even at his young age, has mastered the essence of Sejong.
Okay, thank you. And Liz, this was yours.
Yes, I love this one because it's a Korean form of poetry that's then about a Korean performer. And then there are all these different references to the jangu, a Korean drum, and the magpie, the unofficial bird of Korea. Like I just feel like the student is brilliant. It's clever. And that's another thing that I'll challenge my students to do is something clever. And I think that the author has done that here in this poem. The other thing that I love about it is that it's one complete sentence. Many of the other poems that we've looked at had each line as a sentence or multiple sentences within each line. And this one is one complete sentence. Oh my gosh, like just the art and the craft that it would take to put this together, I find to be so impressive.
Can you read it for us? Because
Sure.
I think that really makes it come alive.
A Kisang Sejong. With the rhythm of the jangu, we dance like magpies, iridescent and spinning, hoping for freedom from the men and their hands, feeling at our ivory ankles, calves, and thighs. Oh, right. And then, when I read this to the students, I'll read it a couple of times so that they can really get what's going on. But then to show them it's at the ankles, then it's at the calves, then it's at the thighs, right? There's some movement here. And also the turn, the shift at the start of the third line. It's a really strong, emotionally, it's poignant. It hits me every time I read it.
Yeah, both of these are just so powerful. Thank you for selecting them and sharing them with us. So as we're moving into our conclusion, I hope we've inspired some people to maybe go out and try their hand at writing or introducing it into their class or bringing in some more techniques and tips into their classroom if they're teaching it. But specifically for writers of Sejong, and those who aren't in a group setting, so to speak, they're at home. So both seasoned and new writers, how can one get feedback?
So we have a Facebook group called Sijo Poetry. So they can post Sijo and then get the feedback. In terms of reference material, as I mentioned earlier, our website has a resource page. So it's sejongculturalsociety.org. It's one word. Go to resource page and look through all the materials we have. We have PowerPoint slides on Sijo and Korean history for teachers, lesson plans, Sijo writing worksheets, and many articles on Sijo writing and teaching Sijo. And we have YouTube channel. So you just Google YouTube channel, Sejong Cultural Society, and then you will find many video recordings on Sijo, how to write Sijo, and the video recording of Sijo and music concerts and many others.
Great.
Email them to me. I would love to read them. Like if we've inspired people to try it out, please send it to me. I'll give you some feedback.
Okay. And can you say what your email address is quickly?
Sure. Elizabeth.jorgensen@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you. One of our registrants on the Koreanist Facebook page. So we promoted this lecture or this talk in a number of different places. But in the comment on the Koreanist Facebook page, one individual wrote, "Be careful. If you listen to this talk, you will want to buy the book." So how can they acquire the book?
This book is available on Amazon. But we provide a complimentary copy to the educators in the US and Canada. So if you are an educator, please send me your current mailing address to sejongculturalsociety@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you so much. And Lucy and Liz, it's been such a pleasure working with you on preparing for this talk. Even more of just a gift, actually, that you've given everyone in the form of Sijo, Korea's poetry form. So I encourage everyone to really, get a copy. It's delightful to read on its own. And for aspiring writers and teachers, it's just packed with all kinds of insights and tips. So I thank you for the contribution you've made to the field. I thank you for agreeing to come and talk with us at the Korea Society. And I just have to say, it brings a smile to my face because for both of you, there's just such a love and heart for Sijo. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.